the last 6 months, March to September, our country, like the rest of the world, has been dealing with the twin crises of the coronavirus pandemic and the deep economic contraction that it precipitated around the world. Our very positive growth trajectory in the first quarter of 2020 was interrupted with the announcement of COVID-19 on around the 25th of March 2020. Unfortunately for us, our early strong actions in closing our borders, denying entry to our ports, and the practicing of health protocols allowed us to contain the spread of the virus. As we speak today, St. Kitts and Nevis, with 19 cases of COVID-19 infections, of which 17 have fully recovered, has one of the lowest numbers of COVID-19 cases in the world. We are considered a very low-risk travel destination. Our careful management of the COVID-19 pandemic allowed us to gradually reopen all sectors of our economy, from agriculture to manufacturing, with very satisfactory results. All our manufacturing plants are opened, and over 84% of all employees willing to work are back on the job. I'm advised that a few employees are turning down invitations to work at nights. This, in my view, is unfortunate, given the global challenges in finding work. Our people have to adjust to the new dynamics of shift work and accept work when it becomes available. The traditional 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. work routine is giving way to flexible hours as dictated by consumers and, of course, the inescapable production schedules. Across the 8 export manufacturing plants, 879 persons are back on the job. Jaro Limited has 205 of its employees back on the job. Jaro is the largest employer in the export manufacturing enclave, and it is followed by API Harrow St. Kitts Limited, which has 198 persons having returned to work. Of a total of 1,112 employees in the export manufacturing sector, 71 were made redundant, leaving a pool of 1,041 persons available for work. 879 employees, representing 84% of the pool, are now satisfactorily back on the job, receiving their earnings. We expect another 100 employees to resume work when Jaro Limited completes its retrofitting of its other plants to ensure compliance with COVID-19 protocols. Jaro has several work plants, and so they are retrofitting a number of them to ensure the safe return of just over 100 employees. I assure Jaro Limited, and indeed all of the manufacturing plants, that any support solicited that we can offer, we will readily consider. Beyond the economy, our society has been adapting well to COVID-19 in spite of the irresponsible behavior of some at recent fetes. Our churches, thank God, are fulfilling their mandate to spread the gospel, providing necessary avenues for our people to worship, to pray and praise our Almighty God. The imposition of restrictions on church gathering in earlier emergency powers COVID-19 regulations was a challenge for my spiritual faith, and I am happy that our churches are operating so responsibly in the context of a dangerous and contagious COVID-19 pandemic. I want to record my appreciation to the church leaders for their understanding and support over this period. We certainly can say, hitherto, the Lord has helped us. St. Kitts and Nevis has come a long way in its successful management of the COVID-19 cases. We are designated by the US-based Centers for Disease Control as a very low-risk destination. We are one of the countries approved to be a part of the CARICOM travel bubble. These gains that we have made should never be frittered away with selfish and irresponsible behaviors by any of our citizens, residents, and visitors. Accordingly, in preparation for the imminent opening of our borders, we have insisted that our citizens and residents comply with all health protocols, especially the wearing of masks in public, frequent hand washing, physical and social distancing, and indeed, in that regard, we must remind people in their own self-interest they will have to consider avoiding large crowds and congested areas. These practices have to become second nature to us as we work to protect ourselves, our families, our friends and loved ones. Given that all of our COVID-19 cases were travel-related or imported cases, strict compliance with the health protocols is the only way to contain the spread of the virus, minimizing any strain on our small health system and loss of employment and productivity due to quarantine, isolation, or hospitalization. To date, our hotel sector remains substantially closed. My government committed that we shall open our borders in October. We did so on the assumption that the critical stakeholders, such as the St. Christopher Year and Seaport Authority, SCASPA, our hotel operators, and indeed the Ministry of Tourism, would ready themselves for the reopening. I am advised by the Tourism Authority that so far 3,458 workers in hotel, hospitality, and transport subsectors have been exposed to training as to the new norms for living and working safely in a COVID-19 environment. The chairman of SCASPA, Mr. Damian Hobson, has advised that works at our main airport, the RLB International, commence on Monday, the 28th of September. That is this week, Monday. The contractor, Ballet Project Management, has advised SCASPA that work will be completed not later than October 26, 2020. The first phase of the work addresses the Welcome Center on the ramp in front of the arrivals area, converting the VIP lounge into a medical screening area and constructing sneeze guards on the counters. I have consulted with our health experts, and they have been working with SCASPA on plans to retrofit our airport for passenger movement in a manner that minimizes risk of COVID-19 infection by our frontline workers at the airport, including our immigration officers, customs officers, and taxi operators. Having consulted with our critical stakeholders regarding their readiness and taking into account the level of national preparedness and awareness of the risks of COVID-19, we will open our borders to the rest of the world. But rest assured, we will never drop our guard. Lives will be protected at all costs. I am pleased to report that our borders will be fully opened on October 31st, 2020. I repeat, our borders will be fully opened on October 31st, 2020. We open our borders not just for tourists or hoteliers. We do this to allow our own nationals and residents abroad the opportunity to return home to their families, their jobs, and their communities in a more regular and predictable way. Additionally, we allow for hotels to open up again to visitors and other guests, and the resumption of work for all of our people. This is a most significant development in my view. We have learned from the experience of others over the last 6 months. We have faithfully been taking the advice of the World Health Organization, the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA, and our own health experts and the National Task Force. The advice from all of these bodies, entities, we have given faithful consideration to in arriving at the decision regarding the opening. We can, with the support of all, take this major step to open our economy fully, and we can now do so while minimizing risks to our own country. Let me take a brief look at the impact of COVID-19 on our economy so far and our people in particular. We have some data for the first 6 months of the year, and the data on employment as at the end of June 2020 revealed that for the first 6 months of 2020, a monthly average of 23,745 jobs were available in St. Kitts and Nevis. This compares to 23,909 jobs available during the same 6-month period of 2019. This reflects over that 6-month period a net decline of 164 jobs for the first half of 2020 compared to 2019. That, of course, will be formal employment, people who would have been registered with Social Security. The relatively strong employment figure up to this time is due to the fact that Four Seasons, up to June, retained the majority of its workers on its payroll. In terms of gender participation in the workplace, data at the end of June indicated that 12,810 jobs were held by women and 10,934 jobs were held by men. More women then were active at work in the first half, and they occupied 54% of all jobs versus 46% of the jobs being held by men. Women seem to be more industrious or more observant and involved in the formal reporting economy. By June, employment was up by 8% in the manufacturing sector and public administration and defense. Declines were recorded in the wholesale, retail, hotels and restaurant and transport, storage and communication sectors ranging from between 3 and 5%. During this period, the non-government sector recorded a loss of 831 jobs, while the public sector recorded an increase of 666 jobs for a net job loss overall of 164, which I referred to earlier. The employment situation during the third quarter is likely to change, with layoffs of employees by Four Seasons and other entity post-June 2020. The layoffs from Four Seasons may reflect the most dramatic impact. This decline is likely to be mitigated by increased employment in the manufacturing sector, largely driven by JARA's uptake in employment, assuming all goes well. JARA, by the end of the year, will be taking on about another 100 employees to take up their role to over 300 plus. It is, as I said earlier, the largest manufacturing plant in the country. And of course, since June, we have moved gradually to remove the restrictions and business operating hours. And we suspect that that would reflect an uptick as entities then have longer business hours and have resulting demand for more workers. The reduction in the number of active jobs reported for the first 6 months resulted in a consequential fall in the average monthly payroll from $76.34 million in 2019 to $74 million in 2020. An average of $38.2 million per month was being paid to females, against $35.8 million being paid to males. Of course, the difference may be a reflection of the fact that more women are at work. More women may like work too. And so we want to encourage our fathers, our brothers, our male adults to seek diligently for work. I want to turn to this matter of severance payment, since there has been some continuing public interest in this matter up to last Tuesday, when the Minister of Environment and I were among the panel on leadership matters. The matter of the severance came up. Our Team Unity government, I should report, inherited a severance fund which had been in the red and had hundreds of former employees dissatisfied with the lengthy delays in receiving payments. And when I say in the red, I should say that that means there was no money in the fund. We have been addressing these issues in a careful manner so as not to further hemorrhage the severance fund. Additionally, to correct errors and the neglect of the former administration, my government has procured the services of an actuary to make determinations on how the financial viability of the fund can be sustained to protect employees in the future. We await that study and subsequent discussion by the tripartite committee and the cabinet on the matter. The unsustainability of the present legislative mechanisms for the management of our severance fund has been further magnified by the COVID-19 layoffs. As of the 22nd of September 2020, the Department of Labor records 1,800 claims for severance, 1,800 as at the 22nd of September. It has been working assiduously during the work week and overtime on weekends and on public holidays to process these claims in preparation for payment. And I want to record the Cabinet's appreciation for their industry and diligence and sensitivity to the fact that everyone is anxious for their payment. I want to commend Minister Phipps for presiding over this particular aspect and indeed all aspects of labor relations. I am advised that 425 claims have been processed to date. The value of these claims is put at the sum of $7.3 million. Substantial bit of money. The federal government has financed the burden of severance payment as the fund is insolvent. The burden then lies with the National Treasury. Accordingly, the federal government has injected EC $11.1 million. I repeat, so far, the Ministry of Finance has injected $11.1 million to cover the cost of COVID-related redundancies and long-service payments in the islands of St. Kitts and Nevis. In keeping with our commitment to the stronger and safer future and the Protection of Employment Act will be revisited to address several matters, including the sustainability of the Severance Fund, eliminating abuses, rationalizations of payouts, and recalibration of the Severance Fund in the context of emergencies and pandemics. The fund never envisaged that we will have a situation where basically all of the country could be shut for a prolonged period. No one had envisaged that all of our hotels may be called upon to be closed for an extended period. So in the context of that lived reality now, we now have to bring legislative enactments to make the fund more resilient to repeat of these future shocks to the system. The Minister of Labor has advised that we are anxiously awaiting input from the other participants and the National Tripartite Committee. Specifically, we are awaiting the input of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce and the workers' representatives and the Tripartite Committee that has been set up to deal with a number of issues with respect to industrial and commercial life, and particularly matters involving workers. So there is where we are at with the fund. Turning to Parliament, at our Cabinet meeting last Monday, we determined the legislative agenda for October, and we shall bring a number of bills to the Parliament addressing a range of issues relating to qualifications for voting, revisiting the residency period for citizenship, international cooperation and matters of taxation, among other things. Following our general practice, after the first reading, some of these bills will be available for public discussion and input before their third and final reading in the Parliament. Our Parliament will meet sometime during the next 2 weeks or thereabout. I can confirm that 2 permanent secretaries have been assigned to facilitate the government's execution of its policies. Mrs. Sherilyn Pemberton has been transferred from the Ministry of Post and Urban Development to the new Ministry of Entertainment, Entrepreneurship and Talent Development. And Ms. Valencia Sider has been transferred to act as Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Sports and Culture. I want to turn attention now to the ECCB-approved moratorium to financial institutions. We commend the decision of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank and the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union Bankers Association to extend the 6 months moratorium on the repayment of loans, both principal and interest, which ended yesterday, the 30th of September. The extension now goes on for a further 12-month period that is starting today, October 1st. and that extension of the moratorium to customers will be based on assessment of their financial condition by their respective commercial banks. In the first 6 months, you asked, and you would have been given almost as a matter of formality. For the next 12 months, you can ask, but the banks will also do a more vigorous assessment of your ability to pay. So if your conditions would have improved significantly, it is very possible that your bankers can say no. In the first wave, the Monetary Council had basically requested, perhaps insisted, that everyone should be given the opportunity for a stay in their payment of principal and interest. The banks, after consultation with the ECCB, have agreed that they will extend it for a 12-month window. Now, the 12-month period have come into consideration because it is expected for a longer period we will still be living with COVID-19, at least for another 12 months. That is why we have to get in the norm of doing the right thing, and that is why we must avoid complacency in application of the health protocols. In addition to the deferral of payments, a waiver of late fees and charges will be applicable to qualified customers during this period. Going forward, the loan repayment deferral program will be based on an assessment of the financial condition of customers, and each member bank will advise its customers of the details and processes for support of the program. Now, the Central Bank and the Monetary Council has to become involved in this because the Central Bank will have, as the regulator, to give a special dispensation to banks in terms of its treatment of that portfolio which is subjected to relief. As you know, the banks have very strict criteria for writing off and writing down of loans for which there had been no payment. So the central bank support will be required, or else the picture and the health of these financial institutions could appear problematic to the regulator. How successful has this moratorium program been so far? I would say very successful. So far, according to the central bank, 2,137 persons in St. Kitts and Nevis have applied and received approval for the moratorium on mortgages totaling $455.6 million. Significant. 2,137 persons in St. Kitts and Nevis have been approved for the moratorium on mortgages, and the mortgages total a whopping $455.6 million. So relief has come as a result of this measure to over 2,000 persons. This is significant. Our 37th Independence Anniversary celebrations have now ended, and overall the assessment is that they went very well. I therefore, as the Chair of Cabinet and Prime Minister, offer my sincerest commendations to the Honorable Akila Byron Nisbet, Chairperson of the Independence Anniversary Committee, and all committee and subcommittee members for their hard work. Commendations are due to every participant, every citizen and resident for the patriotism and pride exhibited during these celebrations. Young Destiny Morris will long be remembered for her contribution to the 37th anniversary of independence by her winning submission of the theme, Resilience, Innovation, and Security for Independence 2020. Destiny, for the record, is merely 12 years old. Let's give her a special hand of encouragement. Speaking of students, let me on behalf of the Cabinet congratulate, and I'm advised, 1,762 candidates participated and succeeded in the CXC, CSEC, which is secondary, and CAPE, largely at the CFBC level examinations. That figure sounds right? Sounds right according to the Minister of Education. Again, we commend the teachers, the parents and guardians, the invigilators, and the Ministry of Education for their support to our students as they sat exams this year under difficult and novel conditions of a global health pandemic. Their resilience, perseverance, and adaptability shone brightly. Last evening, I attended the launch of the St. Kitts and Nevis Robotics Association and Symposium at Government House, Springfield. Also with me was the Minister of Education and the Minister of Health. In my view, we have an amazing cadre of young people committed to science, technology, arts, engineering, and mathematics. I want to commend them all and their future contribution to the growth and development of our country. Our significant investments in education and ICT is, in fact, paying dividends.